underneath the surface, inside of us all, exists a story. Hidden from the majority, every individual possesses a narrative, an arc, an explanation to why he or she is, says, and does the things that they do. My name is Jordan Owens, and this is the community where I find myself. These are the stories of those journeying with us all, and these are the stories that matter.
For 40 years, he has captured some of the most memorable moments in our community. Countless weddings and civic events, Little League baseball teams, middle school and high school sporting events. If it happened in Sulphur Springs in Hopkins County, chances are Mike Laeding was there, camera in hand, ready to capture those special moments that live on forever in our memories. As with every artist who's pursuing his passion and career in the same breath, things are not always easy. Personalities clash and ideas collide. But in the end, Mike Laeding has always captured the memory, and he's done it stunningly. A legacy 4 decades in the making. We're so excited to present our next guest on The Jordan Owens Show, owner of Sulphur Springs Photography, Mike Laeding.
Mike Laeding, thank you for stopping by.
You bet.
You could be known as the eyes of Sulphur Springs in Hopkins County, in a sense. Folks who have lived here in this community or in and around Sulphur Springs, most likely at some point in their lives have had their picture taken by you, their photograph taken by you.
To begin with, I'm grateful to all the people in Hopkins County that supported me and my business and my family all the time that we've been here. There have been times that I feel like some of the stuff that has happened in town, some of the changes that have been made, maybe I could have done a little bit better job of recording some of that for history. But I've never really been hired to do that. My job was always kind of family-based type work or school activity type stuff. Not necessarily school, summer activities, youth sports and so on. So being the recording historian was never really part of the deal, but I still have in some respects. So.
Now, you're not a native of Sulphur Springs, so we'll kind of go back to the beginning. Before you came to Hopkins County, from Michigan originally, and a lot of folks who know you know that, but for those of the people out there that are watching that might not know, just tell us a little bit about your story and where you grew up in Michigan.
Well, those people that do know me never miss an opportunity to call me a Yankee, and a damn Yankee. A lot of them probably do, but yeah, I was born and raised in Saginaw, Michigan, and my first trip to Texas was to go down to the University of Houston to kind of look at the campus and see what was there, because I had decided that after 2 years of junior college that I was going to transfer and come to the University of Houston. So that was the first time I got a chance to come to Texas, and I was impressed with East Texas as I traveled through, how much it looked like the parts of Michigan that I was from. So
Saginaw, what part of Michigan is that?
Let me see. Right about there.
Okay.
That's how Michiganders do it.
Okay.
So yeah, central Michigan really is about 100 miles north of Detroit.
Okay, so not too far from the big city, kind of like Sulphur Springs to Dallas.
Yeah, and that's kind of what got me to Houston maybe more than anything else. I don't know why, because now I kind of abhor big cities. But at that time, I thought big cities were pretty cool, and I thought, yeah, go to school in Houston, that'd be kind of cool. Go to the Astrodome and all that stuff. So, unfortunately, I didn't have a real concrete educational purpose to go there for my education. I just kind of picked it and went. So.
Okay. What's life like in Saginaw for a kid growing up?
Oh. It's really funny because I was thinking about this just a couple days ago. Saginaw at that time was kind of a company town. It was mostly all General Motors. Town of about 100,000 people. Now it's a town of about 50,000 people. It's really, really, the flight out of there has been really kind of heartbreaking. But when I was a kid, Saginaw had very distinct neighborhoods. you knew everybody that lived on each block for probably 4, 5, 6 square blocks. You knew all the families. You knew whose door was open to you if you wanted to come in and just sit down, and where you had to knock, and had a lot of really good neighborhood friends. It was almost perfect for a young kid. You could stay outside and play till it got dark, and then we'd go down to where the street lights were on and play baseball underneath the lights, and manhole covers were home plate and stuff like that. It was a good place to grow up. My mom was a Saginaw native. Marie Dolmage was her maiden name. She came from a real musical family, and to this day she's 102, and you can sit down with her at the piano and just say, "Hey, Mom, play this or play that," and if she doesn't know it, she can figure it out pretty quickly. But my dad was originally from Illinois and moved to Saginaw in about 1938. He was a basketball coach at the high school, and my dad was a pretty interesting guy. He at a time when high school basketball scores were 24-20 and 19-17, he brought fast break basketball to Michigan, and he's pretty well accredited with having done that. His teams were scoring 55, 60 points when everybody else was scoring 20, 25 points. So, but in spite of that, he was very defensive minded too. But he was a coach and a teacher. He always considered himself to be a chemistry teacher first and a coach second. I had 3 sisters, and that's kind of part of the Houston story too. All of my sisters went to the same junior college, went to the same elementary school, same junior high, same high school, same junior college, and then they went on to the University of Michigan. And I kind of wanted to break the mold, and I applied to go to Michigan, and they came back and said, "Hey, you're 1 credit short. You'll need to go to summer school." And I basically said, "No, I'm not going to do that." So I liked to play golf in those days, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go someplace down south where it's warm. I can play. And I think once I got to Houston, in the 3 or 4 years I was there, I played golf once. So, but again, I thought the big city thing would be kind of cool. I was an Elvin Hayes fan, and they just, had a pretty good run of basketball, and I thought it would be interesting stuff to watch. And like I said, my educational reasons were not really very concrete, but I applied, and they sent me 2 applications, I guess kind of by mistake, or maybe they thought I was so dumb I'd need 2 of them, I don't know. But a friend of mine who was playing basketball at the junior college with me, we were sitting around the training room there, and I asked him, I said, "Bill, where are you going to go to school next year?" He said, "I'm going to go to Northern Michigan." And Northern Michigan is 500 miles further north than Saginaw. And I said, "Man, you're crazy, Why don't you go to Houston with me? I got an extra application." So he filled it out and got accepted, so we decided to come down here together. And that was kind of the start of it. And just luck of the draw, we ended up rooming with 2 guys that were from Mount Pleasant, Texas. And we hit it off really, really well. And with the one guy especially I did. His name was Don Cody. And this all kind of ties in because Don Cody is Bob Cody's nephew. Bob Cody from here in Sulphur Springs. So I kind of got to know Bob and his wife Serene and their kids. And let's see, I don't think Robert had been born yet, but I was welcomed into the family, and it was just a real. I adapted, or I should say, I adopted Mount Pleasant in this area pretty early on and pretty easily.
Let's talk about Patty Laeding real quick. Let's stop right here.
Okay.
How'd you 2 meet?
Well, Patty's a native Houstonian, which at that time, we're talking about the late 60s. There weren't that many native Houstonians around. Houston was kind of a place to move to. And I have yet to figure out why her mom and dad had her living in the dorms when they only lived 7 or 8 miles away. But she lived in the dorms, and I lived in the dorms. And at that time, there were about 28,000 students at U of H, but only about 1,200 lived on campus. So it was a pretty small community. And that's where we met. That was in 1968, and we got married in 1971. So what? This will be our 49th anniversary, I guess, this year. Patty then got her degree at East Texas State University, finished up, and she's been teaching here in Sulphur Springs for about 30 years now, I guess.
And she was part of the reason why you guys moved back, is that right?
Yeah.
Moved to Sulphur Springs.
Well, yeah, she was substituting in Mount Pleasant, where we were living. We moved to Mount Pleasant in 1977, and I was in partnership with a guy in Mount Pleasant starting in 1980 in the photography business. He and I had both been car salesmen for a while, and that's when Patty was finishing up her degree. But when we opened the shop in Sulphur Springs, that was in 1984, I drove back and forth for 5 years. And then in 1989, she'd finished her degree, and Jack Chubb called me. He was the principal at the high school at that time, called me. It was the middle of August. Just, man, because your wife teaches English, we need an English teacher. You think she'd, and that kind of precipitated the move. We drove back and forth for about 2 weeks, I think. And then we just said, hey, this is it. We're making this move. That's so in spring that we moved, I think Labor Day of 1989, if I'm not mistaken. So,
what was your interest? What drew you to photography?
Well, my grandfather was a really pretty good amateur photographer. And when he retired from Dow Chemical, I think it was about 1955, if I'm not mistaken, I was like 7 years old. And he used to let me, he got a really nice 35 millimeter camera as a retirement gift from Dow. And we'd go on little family trips, and usually I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I just loved what they did, and they took me all over the place, and he'd always let me take a few pictures. And I was just kind of good at it. I don't know why. I had an eye for it, I guess. And so when we started making family vacation trips, I was kind of the unofficial, official family photographer. I was working at Pat Sis Buick, and that's another story. Pat didn't want to hire me because I was a Yankee. And some other good friends in Mount Pleasant finally convinced him that, hey, this guy's a sports guy like you are. You'll get along. And we did. We got along very, very well. But Mount Pleasant hired a guy named Mike Zavuto to be the head football coach. And Mike was one of a kind, but he came down to the Buick dealership, and Pat was the Booster Club president. And he said, hey, do you know anybody could take pictures on the sideline? Pat said, hey, he'd do it. He'll do it. So I worked a little deal out with Mike. They'd pay for the film and processing, and I just went down there. And I'll tell you, it kind of started to snowball. The car business was a little slow. And I started getting people that would come in and say, hey, you're that picture-taking guy for football, aren't you? Yeah, I am. Could you take some pictures of our daughter with her horse? And it just started to kind of snowball. And 1980, the opportunity came up to buy this small studio in Mount Pleasant, Petty Photography. Been very, very successful. So I was working for Pat Zisk, and Don Sanders, who was eventually going to be my partner, was working right next door at Span Motors, and we'd see each other out there every morning starting the cars and all that. And Don had gotten to be fairly serious about his photography, and this opportunity came up to buy this studio, and neither one of us had any money. He had 2 kids, and I had 3, and I guess we just had more ambition than we had brains. I'm not sure which, but we convinced somebody at the bank to help us out, and we bought Petty Photography, which became Mount Pleasant Photography. We could both see and it was successful, very successful. But we could see kind of early on with the size of our families that we were going to have to figure out some way to expand or make more money. So that's when we started to look at other locations, and Sulphur Springs seemed to fit the bill in terms of a population that would be able to support a studio. You know, I was pretty young. I was mid-30s, I guess. And I've told people this many, many times. I wish my job was to find a location, start a business, run it for about 4 or 5 years, sell it, and move to another location and start another one. Because I'm telling you, the fun part of the business to me was growing the business to start with. The work that was involved. You know, at that time, I'd have people all the time would say, "You're everywhere," you know. And it was kind of like Bobby McDonald was shortly before his death. He was everywhere doing stuff, you know, and that was kind of the way I was when I was younger.
So you're talking about all of these families here in Sulphur Springs that you had the opportunity of photographing over the years, especially early on at your studio there. And actually, before we began this here tonight, we were talking in pre-production, Chad and Logan Vaughn of Chad's Media. We were talking about how they had their pictures taken by you as well, and Logan actually shared some photographs with us that I think you would like to take a look at. These were, I believe, from the 80s. That's right.
Oh, good Lord.
White background.
Yeah.
Family portraits. Logan mentioned how they would bring multiple outfit changes, different props to use in the pictures. And he said that his mom, before they even went into the studio, would kind of give a pep talk to her kids saying, "Hey, I need you to do everything exactly like Mike Laeding tells you how to do it." And she was stressing out. She was freaking out about it. What do you think it is about that process, about bringing in a group of people and having to direct them and get them to pose a certain way that kind of gives you a personality of, all right, I've got control.
Yeah, you know, the best compliment I could get didn't have anything to do with my pictures. It was never about that. And this happened so many times. I mean, I don't like to sound like I'm bragging about it, but it really fired me up. Brides always knew that, you know, I want to do what you want, but somebody's got to be in control. Somebody's got to call the shots. And it needs to be somebody that knows what they're doing. You know, and I'd tell them right up front, I don't need your aunt stepping down from up there at the front of the church telling me how to take this picture. That's not going to work. Because if she does, I'm going to hand her the camera and I'm going to walk out the back door. I'm not going to do that. You know, if you're going to tell me how to do my job, just do it yourself, save some money. But the best compliment I would ever get, and this happened a lot, people would come up to me at the reception and say things like, "You know what? I've been to a lot of weddings, and I've never seen a photographer handle a group of people better than you did. You got them in, you got them out, you made sure they had a good time while they were doing it." And that's the key. You know, distract them, let them have a little bit of fun. You know, let's do some stuff like that. But let me get my job done. That's why I'm going to give you the best quality pictures. Now, a family like that, I'm sure I had a lot of moms but you know, you got to understand, they probably got scolded before they went to the doctor's office too. It wasn't just because it was me, you know.
And you come from an age of photography where it wasn't, you take the picture and you immediately get to see the result. I mean, you know, the younger audience out there, they might not be able to picture this, but there's development that goes along. You couldn't even see what you took right in the moment a lot of times. So you had to go back.
It always kind of made me laugh when I first started doing some digital stuff, and I'd go to ball games, and there'd be 2 or 3 young photographers there that they'd take a picture, and the play's still going on, and they're looking at it, you know. And I always call it chimping, and because they go, "Hey, look, ooh, look what I got, look what I got." Well, you know, the digital world is, it's part of why we're here, because it's all digital. You know, you'd have had Bolex movie cameras over here back in the day, and you wouldn't have any idea if the lighting was right until you saw the finished product. But yeah, you know, it's different.
So we're talking about how photography has evolved over time, going from film to now digital, and now it's in your pockets on a cell phone. What was like a moment, thinking back, that really stands out to you where you were kind of opened up to the new world of digital?
So my real eye-opener about this thing was in about 03 or 04, I don't remember which. I remember Ryan Henry was the quarterback at the high school, and I was doing quite a bit of photography for his parents, and my sideline stuff had kind of morphed into being the big key for me. I was selling a lot of pictures, and what I would do is I'd take pictures on Friday night. I'd rush to my lab Saturday morning. I didn't use my regular lab for this because I needed to get one-day service. And I'd get pictures made and I'd bring them back. Well, it got to the point where people would stop on their way to church if they knew I was there to look at those pictures, because they'd go through a stack of pictures. And of course, if they bought it, then nobody else got to see it. So I started having 2 copies made of everything. I developed a little relationship with the guy the young kid that was working in the lab, and he had started doing some digital stuff. Oh, that's where it's going. That's where it's going. No. So that year, we made the playoffs, and we played Highland Park. And I think this was either 03 or 04. I can't remember for sure. We played over in Garland, and Matthew Stafford was a sophomore. And, of course, early in the game, he threw a spot-on touchdown pass about 55 yards, and I thought, whoa, this guy's going to be something, Anyway, because we're playing Highland Park, there were a lot of people taking pictures that night. I think I counted either 15 or 16 photographers on the sideline. I was the only guy using film. The only guy that I went along and asked and talked to people, So my guy that does my pictures for me, when I go in to see him the next day, he had been there taking pictures. And he said, hey, I've got all this digital stuff. He said, maybe some of your people would be interested in buying some. He said, I was basically shooting Highland Park, but I know there is some. And I said, yeah, whatever. He gave it to me on a CD, and I brought it back. And I sat down and I started looking at those pictures. And the first thing I noticed was everything he'd shot horizontal. And I'm thinking, oh, this idiot just doesn't know how to take a picture. And I thought, he sees enough pictures. What am I not getting here? Well, I went through the pictures and I came to a picture that he had of Ryan in the pocket throwing a pass. And it just so happened that I had almost the identical picture. I'd taken mine vertically, where he filled the whole frame. I had taken mine with a 300 millimeter lens. He had shot his with a 50 millimeter lens horizontally, and I thought, I'm missing something. I took that picture into an editing program and I cropped a 8x10 out of it to look like my picture. Cropped it, got it on the screen, enlarged it, and I was like, oh my God. I called my banker and said, hey, I'm going to a competitive camera Monday morning, and I'm going to make a purchase that I don't have enough money in the bank to cover this check. Will you take care of this? And he said, yeah, for how long? And I said, end of the week or something like that.
So you talk about the digital world and how that changed the game for you and for photographers all over the world. You ended up shutting down your website, you said, and you wanted to kind of get back to the face-to-face interaction of you taking the photograph, even though it's digital, but still having folks come to your store and talk with you and kind of look through your product and finding pictures that they want to keep forever. That's a physical picture that they get to keep. A lot of times we'll get our phone out and we'll take a picture, put it on Facebook, and what happens if Facebook's server crashes and they lose your picture forever? I know Logan Vaughn, off camera, we were talking about how his mom has a tub of photographs. I know my parents have photographs that will go back and reminisce and look at those pictures as well. There's people all over this community who have that, and those pictures were taken by you. So why is that so important that we keep a little bit of that? Even though we've lost the film side of it, how can we keep a little bit of that feel in the world that we're in now?
Well, I have, one of the reasons that I've done things the way I have is I feel like it's important that people have a picture they can hold in their hands, a picture they can put on their wall. a physical picture, not just a picture that's on the computer that they see it every once in a while and when they go, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think when you've got a print in your hands, the problem is we're now reaching a generation of young people, young mothers, that they don't decorate their house with their kids' pictures anymore. You know, they want the portrait work done, and they will spend the money to have it done, but then it's all in digital form, and that's kind of where they leave it, which to me is a little bit sad. It used to be that everything that went through that lab came out as a print. Now, I'm getting to the point where I'm having to make some decisions about that. I'm getting older, and my time that I've got to operate on, I don't have the energy that I used to have. I still do pretty well with it, but 2/3 of a day of work now is really plenty for me. I'd like to catch a little nap in there someplace. But, I don't know. I just feel like I'm letting people down if I don't encourage them to do some prints. I just have always felt that way. So.
And you've touched on your attention to detail. So there's a part of the craft that goes into taking a photograph, taking something that's happening in real time and capturing that moment forever. I think a lot of times with the digital side, the cell phones and digital cameras, you just point and shoot and don't think anything of it. But whereas you actually have the eye to really focus in and think about what's happening and the best way to capture that. And so I think that's an art that doesn't need to be lost.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that 100%. But I still encourage all my customers. If I'm at a baseball game and a mom comes down and says, "Hey, my kid's playing third base. Would you get some pictures for me?" I'm happy to. But I will also encourage that mom. If you stick your phone through the fence and take some, do it. Cover all those bases. Not just what I'm going to get you. You're not going to be able to get what I'm going to be able to get. But that doesn't mean that a little shot in the dugout of him messing around with his buddies, which I can't be everywhere, you might be able to get that from just the other side of the fence. Do it. Don't not take pictures. That's the beauty of digital. I've often thought, I wish I knew how many pictures were shot worldwide when film was at its height. How many pictures were shot on any one given day, and compare it to how many are shot now digitally. And I'll bet I don't know if you could even estimate how many it would be. There's so many more.
So from a hobby with your family to professional business, you've taken countless numbers of photographs.
I wish I knew how many.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Are there any one or two that just stand out whenever you think back and you immediately go back to this moment?
Yeah. Two in particular. Well, no, I can't even say that because I've got some pictures of my kids that are to die for on vacation trips and things like that. But one picture in particular that I did of my dad and Travis, my son, when Travis was about probably 3. Ironically, it's a black and white. It was taken in a stand of virgin white pines up in northern Michigan, and they're actually walking away from me. That picture, I've got it on my wall in my den right now. The other one that immediately comes to mind is I did graduation exercises at West Point about 8 or 9 years ago. And the day before graduation, they assemble on the plane, or I guess they call it the plane, and in control of the base is transferred from the graduating senior class to the junior class. And it's a big deal. It's really a spectacular deal. And I set myself up in the position where I thought this was going to happen. This is 4 guys marching across the plain, presenting the colors with the ramparts of, I think it's Washington Barracks, if I'm not mistaken, back behind them. It's just, and the wind caught the flags just right, at just the right time. And I've got that picture hanging up in my office. And that's one picture that I will probably post on Facebook every single time it shows up in my memories. I just think it's awesome. It really, everything worked. Everything worked. So
Just makes you appreciate the moment.
yeah, it really did. It really did. That was a wonderful experience up there too. I really enjoyed that. I'm kind of a historical type guy, so to have all that history around me for a whole week was really pretty neat.
Well, before we leave, just tell us, what do you think your lasting legacy will be, having taken all these photographs for Sulphur Springs Photography, meeting all of these people here in Hopkins County? What do you want your lasting legacy to be?
Well, I think what we talked about tonight with Logan's family, having this tub of pictures, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. People have been thoughtful enough of my talent to want me to be part of their special family moments. And the family stuff really means a lot. The sports stuff is really cool. I've loved doing it. It's almost relaxing to me. But the family stuff in the portraits, that to me is kind of what I hope they'll look back in 25 years from now when I'm gone and say, yeah, I remember that guy. He took that picture of us like Logan did tonight. That was kind of cool.
Thank you for coming on and
Appreciate
sharing
it.
your story. It's been incredible, and thank you for your commitment to excellence in every single photograph that you take of every person you come across. That's
Thanks.
amazing. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Mike Laeding.
Good enough is not good enough.
That's great. Thank you.
You bet.